the kind of like age old thinking or the old timer thinking, which is, fertility is like specifically a woman's issue, not a man's issue. Why is that inherently just wrong, and how is it wrong?
It's so deeply ingrained in our society, and it's just so completely off base. And it's funny because when you look at health research in general, typically male dominant factors tend to be overstudied and over researched relative to women's health. So kind of men's health typically is getting more funding dollars, more attention. There's a lot of reasons for why that is and why there's this deep imbalance. Fertility is one of those funny worlds where actually the opposite is true. We've always wanted to put the blame on women. We've always wanted to put the burden on women. Men do not want to accept the fact that they may actually be the source of infertility. And so, ironically, these more kind of patriarchal views for why we may want to fund men's health more is actually the same reason why we want to fund female infertility more than why we'd want to study male infertility. The stats are pretty clear when you look at cases of infertility in couples. In a heterosexual couple, it is about just as likely to be from the male partner as a female partner. When you dig in, the stats are approximately 1/3 comes from male factor infertility. That's a problem on the male side. 1/3 is female factor infertility. It's a problem on the women's side. And then it's about 1/3, which is either joint or unexplained infertility. So what that means is, like, people forget, right? How do you have a healthy baby? Well, you need healthy sperm and a healthy egg. It takes two to tango. And so I think that we have just, as men, I'm going to speak on behalf of our entire gender. I think as men, it is easier to put the blame on the female partner. But it's an outdated view. It's a view that is wrong. Fertility is a 50-50 issue.
Yeah, and I really like how you brought up that it's, if we even look at how we've studied society in the past, it has been largely male centered. So I work at a company called Ritual. It's female founded, mom founded as well. And so we're really big on women's health, and not to like share too much info because this hasn't been fully released yet, but we did officially, I believe, complete our human clinical trial on our prenatal, which is going to be the only prenatal to have it. And as well, it kind of makes sense. Like a pregnant woman specifically is a very, it has so many kind of like boundaries around it where you have to be very careful because obviously it's a pregnant woman, so it's difficult to do it in that sense. And then the other difficult piece is that you have to find a group of women that are all in the same stage of pregnancy at the same time. So it's
Right. It's tough. It's
yeah,
tough. It's tough to recruit and find the right participants for a study like that.
it absolutely is. It's and so you see why there's the lack, I guess, around it, and then as well, like, yeah, with the patriarchy and all that, it makes sense. But it's really cool to see that we're starting to find more awareness around it and trying to work deeper into it. I know, as well, we have like a natal choline product, and in that one, it's when they found out that choline was like an essential nutrient, it was because it was on a group of men once again, right? And it was they removed all the choline from their diets, and then they started having like liver failure and stuff. And it's, yeah, so that's a whole other topic. But that's really wild to hear about, like you said, about a third of kind of fertility issues being on men and then women. But it also just, it makes absolute sense. You know what I mean? I think as well, the fact that the main portion of child development or fetal development happens with the woman. So I think, we just kind of like, oh, well, it must be that. But
We kind of assume, yeah, we assume it's on the female side, but there really is a common misconception. I mean, women are born with all the eggs they're ever going to have. So that's a much more limited supply, whereas as men, we're continuously producing sperm. So kind of there's this misconception of like, hey, man, as long as stuff's coming out, then I'm good and I can conceive. And you'll hear these stories about, Robert De Niro just had a kid at the age of 79, for example. And so all of those fit into our pre-existing worldview, and they kind of reinforce and validate it of like, okay, great. Robert De Niro is doing it at 79, then I'm going to be fine 30, 40, 50 years from now. The problem is, because we are continuously producing sperm, we actually have a much higher rate of genetic mutations, of DNA mutations that appear in our sperm because they're just continuously being produced. So the general rule of thumb is men produce genetic mutations in their sperm at a rate 4 times faster than women. And why does that, or women in their eggs, and why does that matter? Well, because actually it is these types of DNA mutations that lead to DNA damage and risks to the child and to the pregnancy. And so, if you look at older dads, autism or autism spectrum disorder is an easy one. You're about 6 times more likely to have a child born with autism if you're a meaningfully older dad versus if you are a younger dad. And we believe that that comes from DNA damage that accumulates in the sperm that is in part associated with aging. And so again, there's just these common misconceptions, and it's like, hey, we've always got sperm, but actually, do you have good quality sperm? And what doesn't get reported is, well, for every Robert De Niro who's 79 and has a kid, the number of men who are older who either are not able to conceive anymore because their sperm is just not good enough, have multiple miscarriages with their partner because there's a baby being born from less healthy sperm, or kids born with genetic conditions. Like, this is one of the dirty secrets of when you hear about these older dads, they are disproportionately likely to have a child born with a congenital issue like autism spectrum disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. There's all these risks that we just don't talk about. And sperm is just, it is a biomarker for your health. And we overlook that a lot.
Yeah, so definitely a few topics I want to dive into on that, but starting with some high level ones. So, what would be the ideal age gap, I guess, in terms of wanting to make sure that if you are wanting to, have a child, like what would be the best age group for you to be in to have healthy sperm and all of that, or like on average, I guess.
Yeah, to oversimplify things, the younger you are, the better. Sperm quality declines pretty consistently as you get older, somewhere in the 1 to 1.5% per year. By the time you're hitting 35, and certainly by the time you're hitting 40, you're starting to see increased incidence of genetic conditions, increased incidence of infertility, increased incidence of miscarriages. And so by the time, what I say to my friends, right, what I would say to my friends is, look, by the time you're 35, by the time you're getting closer to 40, you actually really want to be thinking about your fertility and your ability to have healthy kids. In an ideal world, you're testing your sperm when you're young. You're in your early 20s. You're freezing your sperm when you're young because that is your youngest, healthiest, best sperm. And then someday when you want to have kids, you're able to tap into and use that sperm that you froze when you were younger and healthier.
Yeah, and what was that turnover rate on sperm? Like what's that production time look like?
So it takes about 2.5 months for your body to produce sperm end to end. That's the process of spermatogenesis. But your body's just continuously your body's continuously doing that, and that's independent of how old you are. It's just that certain functions in your body break down as you get older. Or you're introducing environmental exposures or microplastics or phthalates or kind of these chemicals that are affecting your body's ability to do things the way it is supposed to do. And we are more exposed to these things than ever before. And then you layer in, and obviously we can dig into and unpack all of that. You then layer in all these lifestyle choices. Well, hey, if you are obese, that's bad for your body's ability to produce healthy sperm. If you're smoking weed every day, there's been a bunch of studies suggesting that that's bad for you. If you're doing hard drugs, I think is kind of a given. If you're shooting up heroin, probably bad for your sperm. Um, among many, there's many other reasons why you should not be doing it. But drinking, steroid use, testosterone use, all of these things directly impact your sperm quality and your body's ability to produce healthy sperm.
Yeah, and as well, you mentioned that your sperm quality and your fertility level is also a great biomarker for your health and longevity, which is something that I kind of laugh about because when I was younger, one of the things that I always didn't like when I was not ready to like start a family basically was every time I looked into like a health food, like I remember like royal jelly, maca, all these different things. One of the side effects was increased fertility, and I was always like, "Oh man, like I want to be healthy, but not that healthy." But it's funny because a reproductive body is a healthy body, right? Like if you can properly reproduce, like you have to be healthy. You have to be in a healthy state.
That actually means your body's functioning as it should. And it's interesting, right? Like we're all taught to be terrified of accidentally having a child in our teens and 20s. And then you get to your 30s or 40s and you realize that actually, hey, this is not as easy as I thought it would be. And actually, it may take a couple 6, 9, 12 months to be able to have a kid. And that is if them actively trying. You have 1 in 6 couples around the world, right? And this number used to be 1 in 8, then became 1 in 7, now is 1 in 6, based on the WHO studies. 1 in 6 couples are not able to naturally conceive a child within 12 months of trying. And it is just so polar opposite to what we're taught. Like when you're 18, you're terrified of having a kid, and then suddenly you're 35 and you're like, damn, this is taking me a year. I've planned my life, I've planned my finances, I've planned the crib, I picked out a name, I want to settle down with my partner, and suddenly I can't do the thing that all my life I just assumed I could do. And by the way, this is not a niche thing. This is 1 in 6 people, this 1 in 6 couples. So it actually affects, I mean, anyone who's listening, you have friends or relatives or people who have gone through this. This is not niche. This is not minor. This affects 1 in 6 couples. So it's such a rude awakening, I think, for a lot of people who just assume, hey, I can have healthy kids anytime.
Yeah, which I mean falls perfectly into us talking about legacy, because I think this is such an interesting company and just a really cool take on it. But for example, why is it important to be testing our sperm, to know that? What does that process look like? But more specifically, what does it look like with legacy? And also give our listeners a little breakdown of what legacy is, for anyone listening.
Sure. So, Legacy is a male fertility company. We're the largest sperm freezing clinic in the country. We test and freeze more sperm than anyone. That's our specialty. We are, as I said to my board of directors recently, drowning in sperm. It's our little unique claim to fame. But our innovation, the business was started out of Harvard 7 years ago. We raised about $50 million from investors like Bain Capital Ventures and Y Combinator, and celebrities like Justin Bieber, and actually DJ Khaled, who we were talking about earlier. Given that we share a name, is actually an investor in the business. And we designed a kit that is mail-in. So you order a kit online, you get this nifty kit at home. You're able to produce a sperm sample from home. You're not going to a clinic. You mail it back to our lab. We then do a full semen analysis, and we'll send your sperm off for cryo storage. So why does this matter? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I think any guy should be thinking about getting a fertility test just to make sure the swimmers are good. Like no more, no less. It is just the peace of mind that you have knowing that you are able to have kids is very reassuring. The second is you can test for things like DNA damage. You can understand, is there anything that you may be doing in your life that is showing up in your sperm? That is the kind of thing that you need to be thoughtful about and thinking about from a younger age, so you can make the necessary lifestyle changes. It also, if you have kind of suboptimal parameters, it actually is kind of the canary in the coal mine for you. I know doctors who say that you should be doing an annual semen analysis, because basically the semen analysis is just going to tell you, hey, is something wrong with your body, right? And so it is a simple, easy, inexpensive, and frankly pretty enjoyable way, right? You masturbate one time at home, and then you kind of get this overall, hey, are there any red flags? And that's a great way of just staying in touch with your health. And then the last part of it is, if you're freezing your sperm, and especially, if you're young and healthy, but really at any point, if you're freezing your sperm, it is an insurance policy that you will be able to have children in the future, right? For me, I first froze my sperm when I was 26. I am now 36. The sperm quality, and by the way, I have tested my sperm more than anyone in the country, possibly in the planet, right? I test it on a very regular cadence, and I'm actually able to track the ebbs and flows of my lifestyle, by the way, based on the results of my semen analysis. It's super interesting. Like periods of high stress, sperm quality plummets, right? If I'm on vacation and I'm having, drinking maybe one Mai Tai on the beach, right? Sperm quality shoots back up, which is interesting to see. But you can actually see the trend line of over time, my sperm quality has gotten worse. My DNA damage has gone up. That is just a natural progression of aging. And so, when I'm entering into a relationship with someone, I'm very upfront about the fact that, hey, we should probably use the frozen sperm for when I was 26, because that is young, healthy, low DNA damage sperm that'll probably mean a healthier pregnancy and probably mean a healthier child. And I will add one more thing, because this I think we forget about. Our bodies, our human bodies, were designed to have children in our teens, right? Like set aside societal, like obviously there's very real and important reasons why we're not doing that. But at a pure biological level, our bodies are optimized to have children in our teens. Over time, it shifted into okay, couples started to have children in their 20s, right? That was my parents' generation, probably your parents' generation, right? Now we're increasingly having kids in our 30s, right? Like I'm a perfect example of it, right? Like I'm 36 and I don't have any children that I'm aware of, right? And that is just representative of how things have shifted over time. But we are fighting our basic biology. You now have more women who are having kids in the 31 to 35 age range versus the 26 to 30 age range, right? Like the median age for a couple having kids has just been creeping upwards and upwards and upwards. And so in that world, take a heterosexual couple. The man's older, he's got worse quality sperm. The woman's older, she's got worse quality eggs. You are now more likely to face issues with your pregnancy. And so, if as a guy, all you have to do is pay a couple $100, get a kid at home, masturbate at home however you want to, then ship it off to be frozen and know that you will be able to have healthy kids someday. To me, it is just such an absolute no brainer. And that has been the driving force behind building legacy over the last 7 years.
Wow. I I think you already mentioned it there, but for for the average man to get tested, you would recommend doing it once a year, did you say?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, on that note, so I've never tested my sperm personally, but yeah, I think one of the biggest barriers is always just the getting to it, right? Like actually going and to a place, right? Like
Nobody wants to go jerk off in a little room at a clinic while the nurse is waiting for you, and you're stuck with some like old porn magazines on the table, or God forbid a TV that's still showing the video that the guy before you was watching. No one wants to do that. Like you're not going to do that unless you are required to.
right, right. 100%. No, and the ability to bring it home and like you said, have it in your own privacy the way you wanna do it, like, that's absolute game changer. And so when you do this process so how does this look? Like, you get this kit, obviously you masturbate, and then you get, a sperm sample. Do you is it being frozen at that moment in time as you ship it out? And then as well, what are some of those markers that you're checking, like the motility? What are some of the big things we look at?
Great question. So you get the kit at home. It has a few different components. So the kit is sterilized, insulated, shock resistant, temperature resistant. To basically, it's secure. So basically, you're ensuring that your sample, your semen sample, is safe and secure in transit. We ship you the kit. You produce the sperm sample. We have a sperm preservative that keeps your sperm alive for up to 72 hours. Without that preservative, your sperm would die within, call it 30 to 60 minutes, or at least, certainly within a few hours. And so when you're shipping it back to our lab, it arrives the following morning to our lab, typically within an 18 to 20-hour time window. We'll get it at our lab and we will do a full clinic grade semen analysis. So, what does that include? We're looking at the volume of semen produced. Semen, by the way, is the liquid that comes out. Sperm is what's in your semen. We look at your total sperm count. We look at the motility, which is what percentage of them are swimming well. A lot of sperm don't swim well, and those are not going to be able to fertilize eggs. We also look at the concentration, which is the amount of sperm you have per milliliter, so basically how potent is your sample. And then we look at morphology, which is what percentage of your sperm are normal or abnormal. So um, almost nobody knows. I mean, and there's no reason you would unless you're a urologist. The vast majority of sperm is abnormal. So they've got two heads, they've got a funky tail, they're misshapen, whatever it is. But you will have, a certain percentage of your sperm that are normally shaped, that are swimming well, and we're able to calculate all of those metrics. And then we offer an additional service, which is testing for DNA damage, where we actually there's a fairly advanced technique we use to analyze how much DNA damage there is in the sperm, and that gives you a sense of how likely you are to face DNA damage related issues down the line, things like miscarriage or things like genetic conditions for your child.
That is super wild. What like really cool to be able to test that, but also just so smart in making that process so simple, so streamlined, like easy at your home. Man, that's incredible. Okay, well, in terms of sperm health, I already pretty much know the answer to this. I think we've kind of explained it, but just for the listeners, it is sperm health something that is largely controlled by genetics, or is this something that we have a large degree of control over?
Yeah. I don't have a precise answer for you, but certainly there's a genetic component to your sperm health, just as there's a genetic component to your health. But I would say it's probably similar to your overall health, right? You have genetic predispositions to maybe putting on a little bit more weight or being a little bit skinnier, or certain types of health conditions. Sperm probably falls into the same camp. There's a lot that you can do through your lifestyle to improve your sperm quality, and so I'll throw out a few examples. Working out is good for your body, but actually too much strength training, if you're doing heavy training 4 to 5 times a week, that can actually be counterproductive. A lot of men who think they're healthy, they're working out a lot, they're taking steroids. That's actually extremely damaging to your sperm quality. Testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, has taken off for men even in their 30s and 40s. What these men don't know is it actually shuts down your sperm production. You become functionally infertile when you are taking TRT. A lot of men, a lot of biohackers love to spend a lot of time in this, saunas, steam rooms. That actually is extremely damaging to your spermatogenesis as well. And actually, the reason the testicles hang from the body is you want to keep sperm and kind of the sperm manufacturing factory. You want to keep it a little bit cooler than body temperature. So when you're exposing your body to these high heats, very bad for your sperm quality. Anything that kind of restricts, again, kind of increasing the temperature around your scrotal area, like having a hot laptop on your lap all the time, not great. Getting kicked in the balls, also not great. Do not recommend. And then there's some things you can do. Just CoQ10 is a supplement that is correlated with improved male fertility and male fertility outcomes. Things like tomatoes, which have lycopene. There have been some studies suggesting that that's positive for your fertility as well. Nuts in general, quite good for you. The Mediterranean diet, by the way, is the healthiest overall diet for someone who is thinking about their overall sperm health. And then anything with antioxidants, like certain types of berries. Antioxidants are good to helping prevent DNA damage buildup in your sperm as well. So these are a few things that you can be doing. But generally speaking, if you are healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, you should have healthy sperm. The healthier your lifestyle, the healthier sperm. The worse your lifestyle, the worse your sperm.
Yeah, and with that Mediterranean diet, is it largely due to like omega-3 fatty acids that we're getting from it, or just the overall combination of like whole food ingredients? And then as well, what are the main components that make up a sperm? That when we think of like trying to create a healthy sperm, that would be foods we would want to look at for those specific components.
Yeah, I couldn't give you a scientific answer on this. That's a little outside of my scope of expertise. But as far as the Mediterranean diet is concerned, yeah, it's certainly part of it is omega-3. It's a more balanced diet, and when you compare that to the very processed foods that we eat here in the United States, right, a lot of chemical additives, everything is ultra processed. They just banned a certain form of red dye, right, that had been shown to cause cancer. I mean, you hear all these stories about people traveling to Europe and they're like, oh my God, I'm eating so much, but I feel healthier than ever. I'm losing weight. Or you hear about Europeans who come to the US and they're like, I'm just gaining weight everywhere I go. And that's just the way that the foods that we eat are processed and prepared. And so that's why I at least have shifted super organic in my eating, because I see with my own eyes just how bad this stuff is for your sperm and for your health more broadly.
I share this story so many times on this podcast. I hope people aren't like annoyed of hearing it, but I went to Europe for like the first time back in well, actually no, not the first time, but first time alone with my wife and my sister, and we went to Spain. And while we were out there, balling on a budget completely, like had very little money to be spending. And so every time we would go out to eat, it was always, like pretty cheap food, nothing super healthy. A lot of it was like baguettes, some cold cuts, and some cheese. And the craziest thing is, first off, we were walking everywhere, but when I came back from Europe, I think I lost like 15 pounds from just like walking, eating like not healthy food. And it always blew my mind. And then the reverse is true on that as well. My wife has had some family that has came out here. They were actually coming from Venezuela, and out there they could eat what they eat, and be fine. And then out here, it was like they just kept their diet the same, and they gained weight like no one's business. And it's super unfortunate, but yeah, and all the more reason why eating a very clean diet with like whole food ingredients, hopefully organic if you can, is super important.
Yeah, could not possibly agree more. And I used to make fun of my friends for being kind of hippy dippy, and now with everything I've learned about chemicals and BPA's and phthalates and everything, that just like all these carcinogens and that is in our life, and microplastics that is seeping into everything we eat and drink. So I have now, I use a shampoo manufacturer that is chemical and fragrance free. I only buy organic produce. I switched to a laundry detergent that is also chemical free, fragrance free. Same with dishwashing liquid. I set up a microplastics water filter by my kitchen sink tap, so that's the one that I drink out of. It filters out the microplastics. How much is this making a difference? It's hard to tell, but I can tell you the stuff is definitely not bad. Stuff is definitely better than in an unscientific way. It's definitely better than the alternatives. And you think about it, right, like the clothes you're wearing and the dishes you're eating off of, right? Like your laundry detergent and your dishwashing liquid actually matter a lot for those things.
Absolutely. And as well, you mentioned microplastics. So I had two things that I wanted to talk about in terms of negatively impacting fertility and sperm health, and one of them was microplastics, and then the other one, which is I think it's not, maybe it's a little bit pseudoscience or something, but is having your phone in your pocket. Is that actually something that we need to worry about? EMF, like all of that, is that something to really take into consideration, or is it still kind of maybe jury's out, or it's just like no?
This is I mean, look, I want to start with the cell phone stuff because this is my favorite conspiracy theory, and I have to be very careful the way that I say it because there is not yet definitive evidence showing that it is in fact bad for our fertility. I will just say this: there have been some studies suggesting there may be, but I will just say this: having this in your pocket with Bluetooth and 3G and Wi-Fi and whatever else, right? Perpetually pinging every Wi-Fi network around you, and we have a million studies saying that it's perfectly safe, but at the same time we've had millions of studies showing that smoking is safe. And so this is one of those things where just I can't imagine this is good for us. We don't know if it is bad for us. I remember seeing a study a while back, and again I want to be careful with how I say this because I don't know the methodology of the study, but it was suggesting that people who spend a lot of time on the phone holding their phone to their ear were more likely to have certain types of brain cancer. Again, it's one of those things where try not to have it in your pocket. Try, if you're going to leave it by your bedside, put it on airplane mode, or ideally store it somewhere else. Don't constantly have it glued to you at all times, because again, I struggle to imagine a world where this is good for us, and I can certainly imagine a world where this is bad for us.
Well, I believe in the manual that you get with your phone, or I think the iPhones had it. It was like they said to not hold it next to your head. So I mean, that's kind of right. Like I mean, that's a phone, right? But yeah. So if that holds true, if I'm not just like speaking out of nowhere on that, if that actually is the truth, then it would kind of make sense to probably not have it there.
My crazy little thing that I do that is not scientifically validated, but whenever I'm on the phone, I actually don't like using AirPods because again, I kind of similar question marks for me. So I'll actually put my phone on speaker and I'll kind of hold it. I'll usually just hold it like this while I'm talking, um, and it's perfectly functional for me and makes me feel 1% better.
I do the exact same. Sometimes I'll do like wired headphones if I have them handy. But yeah, okay. So I agree. I'm kind of on the same boat. I'm like I'm gonna take the precautions
I
if I
always feel like
can,
I
you
sound
know.
like a crazy conspiracy theorist. I'm like, your phones are killing you, man. The chemicals are fucking up your sperm. And then I step back. I'm like, well, actually, those things are probably true or very possibly true.
Yeah, yeah, and well, as well, if it's an easy change, then I'm just kind of like, okay, I might as well just do it.
Exactly, exactly. I'm not gonna cover my apartment in aluminum foil, right? And I'm not gonna wear a tinfoil hat, but I am gonna take simple steps that don't take a lot of time investment or money. Simple steps that I think may make a difference.
100%. And then with microplastics, like you said, having a water filter, a good one, probably like a reverse osmosis or something along those lines would be
And
very
I think $300 and it to pay someone to install it. So a few $100 out of pocket, it's not nothing. But I feel better knowing that. By the way, I can taste the difference, which is interesting. I just feel better knowing that hey, there's less microplastics in this water. And by the way, we were chatting about this a little earlier, but there is now studies showing that microplastics are found in semen. There is now studies showing that microplastics are found in testicles. There was a recent study that could not find a control group of men who did not have microplastics in their testicles. They literally could not find someone who didn't. Um, it's being found in the penile tissue now. There's reports that it's breaching the placental barrier, and so just all of this stuff is like you may even be passing on microplastics to your partner. You don't even know. And there's no straightforward or easy way for us to eliminate microplastics from our body, at least that I'm aware of.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not aware of it either. I remember my very first time going to Bali. I did like a tour of like a farm, and the person leading the tour, he mentioned at one point, because they have like, especially as an island, they have a really big plastic issue, which the entire world does, but it's very apparent there because what's on the island kind of stays on the island. And so he was mentioning how plastic has essentially been kind of included as like part of the environment, part of the nature. And when he said that, I was like, no, like this is, I wanted to resist that. So like, how could you, you know? But then come to like find out, it's like it's not a choice. It's here. It's everywhere. You have no choice. But yeah, no, and then as well, a water filter I think is such an easy thing to do. And then as well, like you said, good tasting water, but also on top of that, you should be drinking a lot of water daily. And then as well, if you live in a major city like LA or New York, there's more things than just microplastics you want to make sure are not getting in your water. Okay, cool. So we covered a lot of the bad things for fertility, like you said, heat, jacuzzi, sauna, hot laptop, possible phone in the pocket, junk foods, all of those. Definitely things we want to avoid. And then for lifestyle practices that are healthy, like you said, exercise. You mentioned like CoQ10, for example. I think I've heard zinc as well mentioned. Are there any other practices that you are aware of that are beneficial to it? And then also, is having frequent sex something that is good for sperm health and sperm production? Or is there like kind of what is it, the Taoist belief that you should wait a certain amount of time, preserve that energy, right? Semen retention. Um, yeah, what's kind of your take on that?
From what I have seen, semen retention is not the way to go if you are actively trying to conceive. So I'm not talking about overall sperm health. I'm saying in the context of wanting to reproduce and have a baby with another person. Well, first of all, semen retention is going to prevent you from doing the things necessary in order to have the child. But let's assume for a moment it's a long period of semen retention followed by ejaculation. You have optimal sperm quality between 2 and 5 days of abstinence. 3 to 4 days is actually optimal. Beyond that, you'll start to have kind of dead sperm that is showing up in your sample, and less than that, and your body just hasn't had enough time to produce enough sperm. And so the semen will come out, but you may have less volume, you may have lower concentration. All of these things is going to make your sample less potent for intercourse. Keep in mind the fertile window for a woman is much shorter than we think, right? Can be a matter of days, and so you want to time your ejaculations pretty carefully as you're thinking about when the fertile window is going to be. Now, I've seen some people who believe they just try to have as much sex as possible during the fertile window, kind of quantity over quality. But what I can say is the best sperm quality you're going to have is after an abstinence period of 3 to 4 days.
Gotcha. Okay. So 3 to 4 day waiting period. I know as well there's there's more of a kind of like religious belief probably behind the Taoist kind of semen retention, but okay, so 3 to 4 days.
There's also, and I also want to say, I mean, setting aside fertility, I think every guy understands that your mindset and your body pre-ejaculation and post-ejaculation are different, right? Everyone, there's sports players who don't masturbate before a big game because they think it gives them that little extra oomph. Like, there's a lot of other factors at play with how you might think about masturbation or ejaculation that is outside of fertility and how it may affect your mental clarity or focus. Post nut clarity, right, is probably a great example of just after an ejaculation, the male brain just starts to think a little bit differently when it comes to sexual desire and arousal and ability to focus on things that are non-sexual.
Right, right. And another thing you mentioned too, which I thought was very interesting and is a topic that I've gone pretty deep on for even other purposes like gut health. But when it comes to stress, what role does that play with our sperm health, our fertility? Because you mentioned like in a period of high stress, you can see that decrease.
Yeah, I mean, these are literal stressors on the body that negatively affect your sperm production. There's a lot of studies showing that the higher your stress, the worse your sperm quality. I've seen that in my own semen analysis results over the years. And so keeping stress to a manageable level is actually important to your fertility. And I know, when couples think about having kids and it's not working right away, sometimes people will say, "Oh, just relax," and it's the worst possible advice. But at the same time, it's also not wrong. The higher your stress levels, the worse it's going to impact your fertility. And so, in kind of a funny turn, being level headed and clear eyed about things will actually improve your overall fertility.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think as well, it's such a prevalent topic because we really do live in a world where even if you don't think about it, you really are being stressed in so many different ways. Right, and it's also, because someone was asking me about this, they're like, I take a supplement that is meant to, like, help with your stress levels, and, someone was like, "Well, shouldn't you be able to just kinda, like, deal with those on your own?" And I do agree, I'm like, I don't take it often because I want my body to be able to naturally adapt, but my kind of
What do you take? Is it magnesium or?
oh, so it's, L-theanine, saffron, and ashwagandha, and it's kind of a timed release deal. But it really helps with especially like the L-theanine. Like if you take that with coffee, kind of helps with those jitters, and the saffron for mood boosting. But it's excellent. It's a great product. I love it. But my response to the person was really just if you like. And I don't always take the evolutionary view, but a lot of times I do. But if you went back in time, a lot of the issues that you were faced with that would cause stress to you were like in the present moment. And the second that action was taken,
Yeah, dude, you get fight or flight from a Zoom meeting with your boss. Our bodies were not equipped to handle, and you get overstimulated by the bright light of your phone connected to all the information in the world, showing you TikToks that are 3 seconds a piece, and your brain is just constantly being, context switching and bombarded with lights and beautiful people and beautiful imagery, and everything is just so hardwired to grab our attention. And it's just like the world has been designed to try to appeal to the seven deadly sins. It's good at grabbing our attention. So yeah, our bodies were not designed for anything in our modern society, not at all. And so yeah, it makes sense to me that hey, there may be some things that are like I in general believe that I want my body to work as naturally as possible. I take very very few supplements. I take medicine as rarely as possible. But we live in a world that our bodies were not designed for from an evolutionary perspective. It's not shocking to think that we are going to have to adapt and maybe even help our body cope with all this stuff. And then for the last thing I'll say on this is for me, my solution to basically everything is sleep. I get 8 hours of sleep a night. I've done that since I was in college. And I find that that is the way that I'm able to like melt away the stressors from the previous day and kind of get ready to take on the next day. Or as one of my friends calls it, raw dogging life.
you have some good one-liners. Those are good. Yeah, well, sleep is so important, and I think it like it's getting recognition for sure, but I think it still falls under that category where people are like it's not sexy enough. It's not something I like really feel like, oh, I need to do. But I think one of the best ways to highlight it too is someone was explaining, they're like, hey, if you decided to give up your diet for 48 hours and just eat junk food, like you're gonna feel pretty crappy, but like you'll get over it. It'll be okay. You can still function and whatnot. If you don't work out for 48 hours, whatever, you might not feel as good, blah blah, whatever. And they go through down the list, right? And then they get to sleep, and they're like, if you don't sleep for 48 hours, you absolutely know, like you can't function properly. Your mind is like not there. And so it just goes to highlight like truly how important sleep is.
Well, I mean, the longer you are sleep deprived, at a certain point, your body begins to behave as if you are drunk. And everybody has a slightly different sleep schedule and kind of figuring out what you need. And it's very easy to say, hey, I can skimp on 1 or 2 hours of sleep today because I need to wake up early to go do something else. But I think about my job. I'm running a business. I have a series of important and thoughtful decisions that I need to make every single day that I need to be alert and thoughtful and clear headed about in order to make the decisions that the outcomes of which may have significant impacts on my business. And so if you need to make important decisions during the day, you owe it to yourself to get a good night's sleep and have a good kind of sleep hygiene that is getting your brain to where it needs to be.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better. When when it comes to, I have another question here with testosterone. When it comes to after you ejaculate, is there a drop in testosterone immediately after that takes a time to like build it up?
You know, it's funny. I've definitely heard that. I don't understand the post ejaculatory period well enough to really be able to opine on it, but I definitely have heard that. It's kind of it's I think it's kind of the body saying like, all right, hey, I'm done. And like we can get very philosophical about why we're on this planet, but from a pure evolutionary perspective, we're here to reproduce, we're here to ejaculate, we're here to find mates, right? And so I think at that point your body's like, all right, my work here is done, time to take a nap or run away. Probably explains a lot of what modern dating looks like.
Yes, I think it spoke largely to it. And then in terms of ejaculation, is there a point where too much is harmful to the body? Like doing it too frequently?
Yeah, it's a pretty high bar. I would actually say the more harmful aspect is if you're doing it so often that it's almost becoming like an addiction that is taking up time and brain space, right? Like obviously it takes a certain amount of time to masturbate, right? And so if you're going into that and if you're masturbating 10 times a day, right? And it's literally just probably taking an hour, 2 hours, however long it is off your day, you're thinking about it. You're constantly putting your body into arousal mode and then post ejaculatory mode. That's not good for your body. But I haven't seen any science to suggest that masturbating once or twice a day is going to be harmful for you. I've actually seen studies showing that masturbating can reduce your risk of prostate cancer and certain other diseases. Look, the way that I think about it, it is a normal, healthy bodily function. And so, everything in moderation. So, anyone listening, don't masturbate 10 times a day. Try to keep it down to one or two. Once every other day. And also, as you get older, right, as I'm sure many men are aware or listening to this, your libido also is going to go down. So I think everyone in their late teens, early 20s has had those days where you just feel like you're going at it all day. And once you hit your 30s, I don't know that you have the energy for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think having a good boundary around it is 100% important, especially for like the mental health aspect of it. Um, and then I've heard another piece, which I don't know if you know much on this, but we were talking earlier kind of about like morphed sperm, like you said, like a sperm with two heads or like a wonky tail on it. Um, so what role does the woman's egg play in choosing a sperm to essentially be the one that wins the prize? I guess like is there a role there? I've heard that there is like almost like a process in which the egg or the woman's body chooses.
Yeah. It's a very interesting and understood topic. We don't entirely know, but there have been some studies suggesting that actually we always thought about it as the sperm wins the race, but we're also hearing or we're seeing studies suggesting that the egg chooses to allow that sperm to enter. And so it sounds like it's kind of happening on both sides, which again kind of makes sense if you think about fertility as a 50-50 issue. You need the sperm to win the race, you need the egg to accept the sperm, and then the magic happens.
Yeah, yeah, and then as well, would a lot of those kind of like morphed sperms probably die off on the race to the egg because they're just not like as well equipped?
They're losers. They're losers, They're not everyone listening, was born is part of the lucky sperm club. You were born because there was a sperm that was the absolute winner, and every other sperm was a loser, and you were born as a result. It's got to feel pretty good.
Okay. Um, all right. Here's the nice little bow wrap, and I want you to chime in if there's anything I missed, but I like to just kind of compact everything here at the end. So first off, for people or for men who are looking to improve their fertility, their sperm quality, number one, get tested, like get to know your numbers, see where you're at, get good sleep, eat clean food. Mediterranean diet would be a great place to start. And then as well, a few supplements in there, CoQ10, like you mentioned, maybe zinc, And then things to avoid: junk food, junk light, hot stuff on your lap or on your testicles in general, possibly removing your phone, and then get a good water filter. Anything else you would add to there?
Yeah, I would just say that if you are taking any sort of hormones, if you are taking steroids, if you're taking testosterone, keep in mind all of these things will wreak havoc on your fertility. So if you are thinking about going down that path, freeze your sperm before you do to lock in that healthy sperm before you're doing all kinds of funky stuff to yourself.
That's right, and I totally glanced over that piece of information, which was a really good one. Yeah, for for testosterone replacement therapy, like a lot of people are diving into that. So very interesting to hear that it tanks your fertility levels. Do you know why that is? Do you know the kind of the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, there's a whole science behind it, but testosterone production and sperm production are very closely intertwined. And basically, when you're introducing artificial testosterone, i.e., none not produced by your own body, that signals to the body to shut down sperm production.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's wild. Well, good thing to note because I see so many people doing it, and in my head, I was just kind of thinking like, yeah, I guess if your testosterone's dipping, like it could be a good idea. So maybe a better idea would go for maybe like a supplement that naturally increases your testosterone levels. I think I've heard of like Tomcat Ali or something like that. Would that be a better approach as opposed to just going straight for testosterone replacement therapy?
I think there's a lot of changes you can make to your lifestyle that can help improve your testosterone. So I would encourage anyone to look at like, especially if you're in your 30s or early 40s, you should not be taking. Like, I understand why someone would choose to, but just to be clear, from a bodily perspective, you shouldn't be at a point where you need exogenous testosterone. So there's a lot of lifestyle factors that you should look into first. And potentially supplements as well that may improve your testosterone. And I would strongly encourage you to start there before you start injecting something that you may have to inject for the rest of your life. So that would be my word of caution to anyone who's thinking about their testosterone. And certainly, if you're going down that path, freeze your sperm first. Don't take any chances because you may not be able to have a family afterwards.
Yeah, well, and I always love it how there's so much crossover where if you, for example, just did what we said to improve your sperm quality and your fertility, naturally your testosterone levels would also probably see a benefit from it. So, they all it all goes hand in hand. Everything's connected. um, but yeah, and then I just wanted to kind of wrap this up with Legacy. So, how can people get in touch with you, check out Legacy, see what services are offered, dive more into that? The process is obviously like the most streamlined, best one that you can do when it comes to either freezing or testing or anything along those lines. But yeah, go ahead and take a moment. Let people know how they can connect with you, find Legacy, all that good stuff. Yeah, feel free to share it. And of course, it'll be in the description as well.
Totally. So we have a ton of resources as well as a ton of products. But if you're thinking about sperm testing, sperm freezing, check out Legacy at givelegacy.com, GIVE. You can take, we have a bunch of assessments to figure out what products might be right for you. We also have a ton of resources if you're just there to learn. You can follow us on Instagram as well, Give Legacy Inc., INC at the end. We've got a ton of great content as well. You can see some of our celebrity collabs and things that we've done over the years and press features and so on. And then anyone who wants to get in touch with me, you can find me at spermking.com. No joke. I bought that URL a few years ago. It redirects to my LinkedIn. And I figured, hey, if my friends are going to call me that, I might as well lean into it and purchase the URL. But find Legacy online at givelegacy.com. We're happy to hear from you anytime.
Well, thank you for joining us on the show. Always appreciate having the opportunity to learn from someone. So thank you, and maybe we'll have you back on.
Sounds good.
Alrighty. Take it easy, everybody. See you on the next one. Peace.